The cardboard boxers sat in the far corner of the basement, untouched since last year. Evelyn stood in front of them with her breath held tight in her chest. Her fingers hovered over the lid but refused to make contact. It felt as if one small touch would shatter whatever fragile strength she had left. The cold air whispered around her, urging her to move, yet she remained frozen. She finally reached for the box labeled lights, pulling it toward herself. The tape crackled in the silence, a sound that felt louder than her heartbeat. When she lifted the first strand of lights, her hands trembled visibly, the weight of the memories woven into every bulb pressed against her resolve. It felt like opening a wound she wasn't ready to face. As she tried to untangle the cord, a knot caught and tightened. Her breath hitched, her body stiffening, as if resisting the moment itself. The lights slipped from her hand and clattered onto the concrete floor. The small sound echoed like an accusation she wasn't prepared to hear. She stepped back sharply, overwhelmed by the sudden sting of grief. She crouched down, trying again to gather the lights, but her fingers faltered. The basement seemed to grow colder, shadows stretching toward her feet. A wave of dizziness swirled through her as she closed her eyes tightly. Everything inside her whispered that she wasn't ready for this ritual. It felt like a betrayal to open anything that her mother once touched. Evelyn let the lights slip through her fingers again, surrendering to the moment. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying the ache that pulsed beneath her ribs. Her throat tightened, forcing shallow breaths between the silence. The basement felt too full of ghosts, too full of what once was. She rose slowly, as if gravity itself begged her to stay down. With deliberate steps, she backed away from the boxes she once loved. Each step felt like walking through thick winter snow, heavy and resistant. She reached the bottom of the stairs and paused, feeling defeated. A faint hum of the furnace filled the space where her courage should be. She pressed her palm to the wall, needing its solid reassurance. Finally, she turned off the basement light, casting everything into darkness. The shadows swallowed the boxes, releasing her from their silent demand. But the ache followed her up the stairs, clinging to her heartbeat. Even without opening them, the memories had already found her, and she knew something inside her had shifted, even if she couldn't name it. The living room felt impossibly empty as Evelyn stepped inside. The absence of decorations made the space echo with unfinished grief. Outside her window, distant lights blinked across neighboring houses. Their cheer only deepened the hollow quiet of her own home. Winter pressed against the glass, urging warmth she couldn't summon. She lowered herself onto the couch, feeling the cushions sigh beneath her. The familiar spot beside her remained untouched, a ghost of comfort. Her mother's blanket lay folded on the armrest, soft yet unreachable. Evelyn brushed a fingertip across it but stopped almost instantly. The fabric carried memories too tender to disturb. From the kitchen came the faint tick of a cooling kettle. Even mundane sounds felt amplified by the house's stillness. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet swallow her whole. Loneliness curled around her ribs like a tightening ribbon. Her breaths grew shallow, as if silence itself restrained her. She tried to imagine the room filled with warm lights again, but every image dissolved before it could form completely. Her mother's soft laughter echoed only in memory now. Evelyn felt the hollowness expand until it touched every corner. Christmas no longer felt like a season, only a reminder of loss. She rose to open the curtains halfway, hoping for distraction. The night shimmered with festive colors she couldn't feel. Children's voices carried from down the street, bright and joyful. Their laughter seemed to belong to another world entirely, one Evelyn wasn't sure she could ever return to. She wrapped her arms around herself, chasing warmth, but the house offered no comfort, only unspoken memories. Her eyes drifted toward the darkened corner where the tree once stood. A shell of emptiness sat where tradition used to bloom. She exhaled slowly, the breath trembling on its way out. Evelyn crossed the room as though moving through heavy water. She touched the bare spot where the tree would have anchored the season. Her hand lingered there, sensing a longing too deep to ignore. Something inside her stirred, fragile but undeniable. The silence felt different, now still painful, but full of unmet need. The knock at the door startled her from her fog of thoughts. It was firm but hesitant, as though unsure it deserved an answer. Evelyn hesitated before approaching, her heartbeat picking up pace. When she opened the door, cold air swept past her feet, and there stood Mr. Hawthorne, bundled in his old wool coat. His cheeks were flushed from the winter wind, eyes soft and hopeful. He held a tangled string of lights in his gloved hands. "I'm afraid I can't get these working," he said quietly. The apology in his voice made her chest tighten. He looked almost embarrassed to be asking at all. Evelyn blinked, unsure how to respond to the unexpected request. Her first instinct was to retreat behind her familiar walls, but something gentle in his expression made her pause. He was a man who had also lost someone recently. She recognized his grief like a reflection of her own. "I just need a bit of help on the porch," he added. His voice wavered with a mix of hope and humility. Evelyn swallowed, feeling resistance rise inside her. Helping meant stepping toward a world she'd abandoned, yet refusing felt like shutting a door on something human. After a long silence, she gave a slow nod. Her breath escaped in a cloud as she stepped outside. The cold wrapped around her shoulders but didn't chase her back in. Mr. Hawthorne's relief softened the tension in her chest. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't entirely alone. They walked together toward his porch, their steps quiet on the snow. The railing was draped with faded garlands from years past. A small ladder leaned against the wall, waiting patiently. The scene felt both familiar and foreign to her aching heart. She paused, sensing the emotion beneath the simple task. Mr. Hawthorne handed her the lights with a grateful smile. Evelyn felt the weight of them settle into her palms. They were tangled, old, and stubborn, much like her grief. Yet something inside her sparked at the sight of them. A faint pull toward connection she didn't yet understand. On the porch, Evelyn spread the lights across the wooden planks. The bulbs glimmered faintly under the street lamp's glow. She plugged them into the outlet, hope flickering with the gesture. But the strand remained lifeless, dark as untouched winter soil. She exhaled sharply, disappointment rising like a tide. Mr. Hawthorne crouched beside her, inspecting the bulbs. His fingers shook slightly, perhaps from age or emotion. He twisted one bulb gently, then another with care. Still nothing happened. The silence felt heavier now. Evelyn sensed his quiet frustration seeping into her own. She lifted a bulb to the light, studying its cloudy surface. The cold stung her fingertips as she turned it slowly. Her mother used to test bulbs the same way, patient and sure. The memory struck so suddenly she nearly lost her breath. A familiar ache wrapped itself around her heart. They tried another outlet, hoping for a miracle spark. But again, the lights remained stubbornly dark. The failure felt oddly personal, as if echoing her own numbness. Evelyn clenched her jaw, swallowing a wave of self-blame. She wondered why even small efforts felt insurmountable now. Mr. Hawthorne sighed softly, lowering himself onto the porch step. His shoulders slumped with a kind of weary resignation. Evelyn sat beside him, the cold seeping through her coat. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable, only honest. Two people facing the same darkness in different ways. She ran her thumb along the wire, feeling each bump and twist. The strand looked fragile, almost defeated by time, yet some part of her refused to set it aside completely. There had to be a way to coax light from these stubborn bulbs. Her persistence surprised her, breaking through her grief. When she tried one last time, the lights flickered faintly. A weak pulse of brightness shimmered before fading again. Evelyn felt a spark of frustration mixed with reluctant hope. The flicker meant something inside them still wanted to shine, and that small truth unsettled her more than the darkness did. As Evelyn untangled another section of the lights, something slipped free. A small metal ornament clinked against the porch floor. It was shaped like a snowflake, delicate and worn with age. Mr. Hawthorne smiled softly, recognizing it instantly. "It was my wife's favorite," he murmured, voice trembling. Evelyn picked it up gently, cradling it in her palm. The snowflake's edges were smooth from years of handling. She imagined the hands that once hung it each December. Her chest tightened with an ache both foreign and familiar. Love preserved in metal, memory preserved in silence. She ran her thumb across the snowflake, feeling its cool surface. It reminded her of the glass ornaments her mother cherished. She saw them in her mind's soft colors, gentle glow, fragile beauty. The memory rose so vividly that tears blurred her vision. She blinked hard, steadying herself against the swell of emotion. Mr. Hawthorne's gaze softened when he noticed her expression. "Funny how small things hold entire worlds," he whispered. Evelyn nodded, unable to trust her voice at the moment. The snowflake warmed in her hand, though the air was freezing. It felt like holding a heartbeat from another lifetime. A quiet warmth spread through her despite the cold around them. Memories she had avoided now glimmered with unexpected gentleness. Her mother's laughter echoed softly inside her mind again, not as a wound this time, but as something tender and guiding. The shift was subtle, but she felt it resonate deeply. She returned the ornament to Mr. Hawthorne with reverence. He accepted it with a grateful smile that softened his features. The moment felt like a shared remembrance between old souls. Something unspoken passed between them, understanding, perhaps trust. It settled over the porch like a thin blanket of peace. As they resumed working, Evelyn sensed something change inside her. The darkness she carried felt lighter, edged with fragile warmth. The memory of her mother no longer felt unbearable to touch. It flickered softly, like the promise of a light not yet restored. And she knew this small beginning was guiding her somewhere new. The next morning, Evelyn found herself walking toward Mr. Hawthorne's house. She wasn't sure why she'd come back, only that something pulled her here. The cold air carried the crisp scent of pine drifting from nearby yards. Her boots crunched over thin layers of frost as she approached the porch. The familiar ache in her chest felt quieter, if only slightly. Mr. Hawthorne greeted her with a surprised but grateful smile. His eyes brightened in a way that warmed the cold morning. He held another strand of lights, this one newer but still tangled. Evelyn felt a faint flutter of purpose stir in her chest. Helping him suddenly felt like helping a forgotten part of herself. They began untangling the lights together, fingers brushing occasionally. The task was simple, but its weight felt strangely significant. A small bulb blinked once, then steadied before going dark again. Evelyn leaned closer, searching for the faulty connection. That tiny flicker was enough to spark a quiet hope. She remembered her mother teaching her how to test bulbs. "Look for the stubborn ones," her mother used to say gently. The memory rose unexpectedly, soft as candle flame in winter. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It felt almost comforting, as if the past had come to guide her rather than break her. When the lights finally glowed steadily for a moment, she inhaled sharply. A faint shimmer illuminated Mr. Hawthorne's face with childlike delight. Evelyn felt her own lips curve into a fragile smile. The porch brightened briefly before the lights dimmed again. Still, the moment glowed inside her long after the bulbs faded. "Progress," Mr. Hawthorne said softly, his breath forming clouds. Evelyn nodded, sensing the truth of the words sink deep. Not everything had to be fixed at once. Small steps mattered. The realization warmed her more than the winter sun overhead. She straightened her shoulders, ready to try again. As they worked in silence, Evelyn felt the cold sting soften. Each passing minute eased a layer of heaviness inside her. The flicker of the lights mirrored something awakening within. When she glanced at Mr. Hawthorne, gratitude shone quietly between them. And she knew this was more than decoration, it was healing. They took a short break, sitting on the porch steps side by side. The sky had shifted to a pale gray, promising snow by nightfall. Evelyn rubbed her gloved hands together, feeling the chill settle. Mr. Hawthorne watched the quiet street with thoughtful eyes. A silence formed between them, gentle but expectant. "My wife loved Christmas lights," he began softly. His voice trembled like an old record caught on a memory. "She said they made the dark feel less lonely in winter." Evelyn felt the words settle heavily in her chest. They echoed something she had felt but hadn't dared to admit. He looked down at his hands, wringing them slowly. "Last year was my first without her," he continued quietly. "I tried doing the lights alone, but it was too much." His confession cracked the air with unspoken grief. Evelyn's throat tightened in empathy she couldn't voice. She inhaled deeply, letting her guard soften just a little. "It's my first year without my mom," she whispered. The truth slipped out before she could stop it. Saying it aloud felt like stepping onto thin ice. Yet she felt oddly steadier after the words left her. Mr. Hawthorne nodded slowly, his eyes full of understanding. "Loss changes the shape of everything," he murmured. Evelyn felt a small tremor pass through her chest. Hearing someone articulate her own truth felt unexpectedly relieving. As if the grief was lighter now that it wasn't only hers. The porch seemed to hold their shared sorrow, gently. Snowflakes began falling in soft, hesitant spirals around them. Each one melted on her coat like a brief moment of grace. Evelyn felt a warmth growing beneath her grief's surface. Connection, fragile but real, bloomed quietly between them. When they finally rose to continue working, the air felt changed. Not lighter, but more breathable, more honest. Evelyn's movements no longer felt weighed down by silence. Mr. Hawthorne's presence no longer felt like intrusion but solace. And the cracks in her heart felt like places light could enter. They spent the next hour trying every trick they could think of. Different outlets, different bulbs, different arrangements entirely. Each attempt brought a moment of hope followed by disappointment, but neither of them stepped away from the task. Perseverance settled into the space like a quiet resolve. Evelyn crouched near the outlet, testing the wires again. Her fingers had grown numb from the cold, but she kept working. The world around them felt muted beneath the falling snow. She focused on the smallest details, refusing to give up. That determination felt like something new inside her. Mr. Hawthorne tried replacing a few bulbs with spares he'd saved. Some sparked briefly, others stayed stubbornly dark. He chuckled softly at one bulb that simply refused to twist properly. The sound was warm, almost contagious in its softness. Evelyn felt her shoulders relax at the gentle humor. At one point the entire strand lit for a heartbeat. A sudden glow washed over the porch in warm color. Evelyn gasped, feeling hope surge up her spine. But just as quickly, the lights sputtered out again. Still, the brief brilliance left a lingering imprint. She refused to let discouragement take hold. Each failure felt less like a setback and more like progress. The rhythm of their attempts created a steady momentum. Evelyn felt herself leaning into the process without fear. Trying had become its own quiet victory. The snow deepened around their feet, soft and undisturbed. Their breaths rose in pale clouds that drifted upward. The porch glowed faintly from the street lamp overhead. Evelyn felt strangely grounded in the simple, shared effort. Grief loosened its grip each time her hands touched the lights. By the time they paused again, the lights still refused to cooperate. Yet Evelyn felt an unexpected warmth expanding inside her. The failures didn't feel like endings, only steps along a path. When she looked at Mr. Hawthorne, he smiled as if sensing it too, and she realized trying was helping her more than success ever could. After another round of adjustments, the top half of the strand lit up. A warm amber glow spread across the porch railing like sunrise. Evelyn laughed softly, surprised by the sound escaping her. Mr. Hawthorne clapped his gloved hands together in delight. For the first time, triumph outshined their frustration. They stood back to admire the partial success. It wasn't perfect, but it was undeniably progress. The lights cast gentle reflections across the snowy steps. Evelyn felt something brighten within her chest, a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in months. Half a porch is better than none, Mr. Hawthorne joked warmly. Evelyn nodded, smiling through a growing warmth. His humor softened the edges of the cold evening. She felt lighter, as though grief had loosened its hold. One small victory had opened a wider crack of hope. They worked slowly to secure the lit section in place. Each bulb seemed to glow with quiet resilience. Evelyn traced the line of lights with careful hands. Their warmth brushed lightly against her fingertips. It felt like touching a lived memory rather than a burden. The snow thickened into soft, drifting curtains around them. The lights glowed brighter against the deepening dusk. Evelyn's smile lingered long after she lowered her hands. She hadn't realized how starved she was for a moment like this. Relief spread through her like warmth from a hidden hearth. They stepped back again, admiring the small but shining display. The porch looked cozier, almost alive again. Evelyn felt her heart steady, filled with grateful quiet. This small victory felt like a beginning she didn't expect. She exhaled softly, letting the moment settle fully. As they packed up for the evening, her steps felt lighter. The night no longer seemed as heavy or unforgiving. Mr. Hawthorne's gratitude warmed her more than she admitted. Evelyn sensed a shift inside her, subtle but undeniable. A seed of brightness had finally taken root. Later that evening, they sat together on the softly lit porch. The working lights cast a gentle glow around their tired faces. Steam curled from the mugs of tea Mr. Hawthorne had prepared. The air hummed with a quiet intimacy neither expected. Snowflakes drifted slowly, settling on the railing in silence. Mr. Hawthorne gazed at the lights with nostalgic eyes. These were always her favorite evenings, he murmured. His voice held both love and lingering sorrow. Evelyn felt the weight of his memories settle around them. The past seemed to sit gently between their chairs. She loved the simple things, he continued softly. Warm drinks, glowing lights, quiet nights like this. He paused, as if picturing her in the doorway. Evelyn sensed the ache behind his gentle tone. It resonated deeply with her own unspoken longing. Evelyn took a slow sip of tea, warming her hands. "My mom used to say the same," she whispered eventually. "She believed lights helped us see what sadness tried to hide." The confession wavered between strength and vulnerability. Speaking it aloud felt like reopening a door she'd shut tightly. Mr. Hawthorne nodded, eyes softening in shared understanding. "Grief is strange," he said, voice, barely above a breath. "It dims everything, but somehow leaves space for light too." Evelyn felt her throat tighten at the truth of his words. A quiet longing stirred inside her, unresolved yet gentle. They sat in silence, letting their stories linger between them. The lights flickered softly, illuminating their thoughtful faces. Evelyn felt something pull inside her chest, tender and aching. Not grief exactly, but the yearning for something still missing. The moment felt suspended, heavy with unspoken need. As she rose to leave, the glow of the porch followed her steps. She paused at the edge of the walkway, gazing back once more. The lights shimmered like small promises of something unfinished. Evelyn felt a quiet ache that asked for more than she understood, and she knew her journey wasn't over. Something still waited to change. The house felt different when Evelyn stepped inside that evening. The quiet no longer pressed so sharply against her ribs. Something soft lingered from the porch, like borrowed warmth. She walked slowly toward the basement door, pulse unsteady. A trembling resolve nudged her forward with careful insistence. At the top of the stairs, she hesitated, gripping the railing. The air below seemed colder than before, thick with memories. But instead of turning away, she inhaled deeply and descended. Her footsteps echoed softly against the unfinished walls. Each step felt like a small challenge her heart accepted. The boxers waited in the shadows exactly as she had left them. Her breath formed a pale cloud as she approached the closest one. The sight no longer sent panic rushing through her chest. Instead, she felt a strange mixture of fear and courage, a duality that made her feel more alive than before. She crouched down, laying her hand gently on the cardboard. It felt familiar, worn from years of seasonal tradition. Her fingers traced the faded handwriting of her mother's label. "Tree lights," it read, simple yet filled with memory. The letters seemed to glow softly beneath her touch. With a slow exhale, she lifted the lid for the first time. The scent of old pine and dust rose to greet her. The lights lay coiled in quiet disarray, waiting patiently. Her chest tightened, but did not collapse as before. Something inside her steadied as she reached for them. She lifted the strand from the box, feeling its familiar weight. The bulbs reflected faint glimmers of basement light. They carried decades of laughter, rituals, and gentle evenings. Evelyn allowed the memories to surface without resistance. Their tenderness softened the edges of her grief. As she stood holding the lights, she felt a fragile shift, not yet healing, but the willingness to try again. Her mother's absence no longer felt like an unlit void. It felt like a quiet presence urging her forward. And the chapter closed with courage blooming in silence. Evelyn carried the lights upstairs, heart pounding softly. The living room felt brighter than earlier, though unchanged. She placed the lights gently beside the empty tree stand. The absence no longer felt like a wound, but a beginning. She inhaled deeply, preparing herself for the next step. She retrieved the artificial tree from the hall closet. Each metal branch unfolded with a familiar metallic whisper. Her hands moved carefully, guided by years of tradition. As the tree rose, her breath steadied in quiet rhythm. The act felt sacred, tender, and surprisingly strong. When she wrapped the lights around the branches, she paused. The bulbs looked smaller than she remembered, almost delicate. She plugged the strand into the outlet with trembling hands. A faint spark of hope flickered within her chest. Then the lights stayed stubbornly dark, refusing to glow. For a moment, disappointment washed over her like cold rain. Her throat tightened, and old grief pressed close again. But she didn't step back or turn away this time. Instead, she knelt beside the tree, studying each bulb. The silence around her felt patient rather than punishing. She tested the bulbs one by one, hands steady despite tears. Her mother's voice echoed softly in the back of her mind. "Some lights just need extra care," the memory whispered. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut, letting the tears fall freely. But she kept working, refusing to let sorrow halt her. When the lights still refused to shine, she sat back slowly. The tree loomed gently above her, unlit but significant. It felt like a reflection of her own heart trying, reaching. She wiped her cheeks, breathing through the tender ache. The effort itself had become its own kind of illumination. She left the lights in place, even without their glow. The tree stood as a symbol of her willingness to move forward. Evelyn rose with a quiet strength, unfamiliar yet comforting. The darkness of the branches no longer felt like defeat. It felt like the first honest step toward returning to light. The next morning, a soft knock echoed through Evelyn's door. She opened it to find Mr. Hawthorne holding a small box, Snow dusted his coat and hat like delicate powdered sugar. He smiled gently, eyes warm with unspoken understanding. "I thought these might help," he said with quiet hope. He handed her the box, wrapped in simple brown paper. Her hands tingled as she accepted the unexpected gift. When she opened it, a new set of Christmas lights gleamed inside. Their colors shimmered even without being plugged in. Emotion swelled so suddenly she nearly lost her breath. "I know some lights can't be fixed," he murmured softly. "But sometimes replacing them lets the rest shine again." The words struck her heart with undeniable tenderness. It wasn't just about the lights. She knew that instantly. It was about permission to keep living, gently and bravely. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she looked up at him. Snowflakes drifted around them in slow, graceful spirals. She whispered a thank you that trembled through her voice. The kindness in his gesture broke something open inside her. Not pain, something like acceptance, fragile and luminous. He nodded with quiet understanding, stepping back slightly. But he didn't leave, waiting instead for her next move. Evelyn clutched the box to her chest, feeling its promise. It was more than a gift. It was a bridge between past and present, a reminder that she did not have to walk alone. "Will you help me?" she asked, voice soft but steady. Mr. Hawthorne's smile broadened with gentle relief. Together they walked into the living room, snow melting from their boots. The unlit tree waited patiently for its second chance. Evelyn felt her heartbeat lift with quiet anticipation. She placed the new lights beside the old ones carefully. The contrast illuminated her journey more clearly than words. Loss and renewal, side by side, intertwined with meaning. Mr. Hawthorne touched her shoulder with reassuring warmth, and she knew something new had begun unfolding inside her. Together they began weaving the new lights through the branches. Their hands moved with gentle coordination, steady and sure. The bulbs clinked softly, filling the room with hopeful sound. Evelyn felt the weight inside her chest begin to lift. The moment felt sacred, like stitching light into memory. Mr. Hawthorne stepped back, giving her space to finish. Evelyn wrapped the final strand with careful intention. Her fingers brushed the old lights still hanging quietly beneath. Both sets seemed to belong together in unexpected harmony, past and present blending into something tender and whole. She took a deep breath and reached for the outlet. The cord slipped into place with a soft, decisive click. A heartbeat of silence followed, stretching into eternity. Then, in a rush of color, the tree burst into radiant glow. Light spilled across the room like warm winter dawn. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. The colors danced across her skin, soft and welcoming. Her heart filled with a warmth she hadn't felt in months. It was as if the room itself exhaled in gentle relief. Mr. Hawthorne watched her with a smile full of quiet pride. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but they weren't from sorrow. The tree looked alive, glowing with memory and renewal. She reached out to touch a branch, feeling steady at last. Her grief felt different now, less like a storm, more like rain. Still present, but nourishing, rather than breaking her. Mr. Hawthorne stepped beside her, admiring the glow. "You brought it back," he said softly, voice filled with meaning. Evelyn shook her head gently, wiping her cheek. "No," she whispered, "we brought it back together." The truth of it warmed the room more deeply than the lights. As they stood before the glowing tree, Evelyn felt renewed. Light shimmered around them like a quiet celebration. Her heart no longer felt frozen beneath winter's weight. Something inside her had finally awakened from its long sleep, and she knew she was ready for whatever came next. On Christmas morning, Evelyn entered the living room alone. The tree glowed softly in the early winter light. Its colors reflected gently against the quiet walls. A sense of peace settled around her like a warm shawl. The stillness felt comforting rather than empty. She approached the tree, fingertips brushing a glowing branch. The lights hummed faintly, steady and assured. Her breath deepened as warmth spread through her chest. The ache of memory felt softer, wrapped in gentle understanding. She let the moment settle into her like a blessing. For the first time, she didn't fear the quiet around her. It felt like space where her mother's love still lingered, not as a shadow, but as a presence woven through everything. Evelyn felt her throat tighten with grateful tenderness. The grief had changed shape into something she could hold. She sat beside the tree, letting its glow fill her heart. Every bulb seemed to pulse with memory and meaning. Her mother's voice drifted through her mind softly. Not painful, but comforting, steady, familiar. A warmth that embraced her from the inside out. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the light wash over her. She pictured her mother's smile, bright and unwavering. The image filled her with a courage she'd long forgotten. A gentle understanding blossomed like quiet dawn. Her mother's love had never dimmed it, had simply changed form. When she opened her eyes, the room felt transformed, not by decorations, but by what she now carried within. The light around her echoed the light awakening inside. It belonged to her now, steady and unbroken. A reminder that love does not end, it evolves. Evelyn touched her heart, tears warming her grateful smile. Her mother now lived there, in every hope newly kindled. She understood at last that she continued to spread her mother's light, not through perfect holidays, but through quiet acts of courage, and the glow within her promised it would never fade.